Uh,
But at the same time, in current situation, it's really disheartening to see like how glycemic index has been utilized in terms of, especially when people are diagnosed with diabetes. The set of recommendations they get is do not eat fruits because they may raise your blood sugar level, and especially when they go to a dietitian. So, would you be able to speak on that? Like, because many people are actually afraid to take fruits or carbohydrates when they're diagnosed with diabetes.
No, well, I think that what one has to do is once, with all things with diabetes, um, one of the, I mean, probably we used to say 90% of people with diabetes, or 80 to 90% were overweight. Um, I think we might be even putting it higher than that to nearer probably 95% have got not just overweight or perhaps not overweight, but abdominal fat, which is the real worry, especially intra-abdominal fat. And I think that people who have intra-abdominal fat to any extent, who've got a wide girth, as it were, a wider girth than they really ought to have. These people have to be careful what they eat in general, in total quantity. In other words, it's not just cutting down on the carb. Now, it may be that they get some benefit by cutting out pleasant carbohydrate foods, simply because it gets them to lose weight, because it stops them from eating food. But to take the food and say, well, this particular food is the reason, is, I think, unwise. I think that there are many advantages of fruit. Fruit is absolutely not a particularly, in general, high glycemic index food. Bananas are just about a little bit less than bread, white bread. So bananas, a ripe banana. If, on the other hand, you take bananas in their best form, when they're a little bit green at the end, in the ends, the glycemic index of those bananas is relatively low. So I think I like mangoes. I think all of us like mangoes. And you can get some mangoes which you find difficult to stop eating if you've bought a lot of them. And you will eat a lot of mangoes, and they do raise the blood glucose. There's no question of that.
yeah, especially the mangoes, like Dr. Jenkins. If we get the mangoes as if like from where we are from, like
Yes.
in South India, these are the juiciest mangoes. Like, yeah,
Isn't that right? Isn't that
yes.
right? So remember that when I was young, I was in Australia,
Mhm.
and we used to get mangoes there that were right. So I know exactly where you're coming from. So all I'm saying is that if you have them in that really good form, and you can just go out and take them, do you know what I mean? And you have a lot of them, or here you'd go and buy a lot of them, but and then you can gorge on them, and I mean,
Yes.
yes, you will have trouble. Yes, you will. Your blood glucose level will go up, and yes, it will help you put on weight. But that's not saying that you can't have a half a mango and have that as fruit with your meals, which would be much more healthy. So all I'm saying is, yes, you have to avoid excess. And that's true for diabetes. That's absolutely, unfortunately true. And an excess is very difficult for us to avoid. And because mangoes are so tasty, it's much more difficult to avoid. But it's not the mango's fault. Do you know what I mean? It's our fault for eating too much. So I would say it's too much that's doing the problem. And I think if you find that you've been bad for a while and you cannot resist eating a lot of mangoes, then do it less frequently. In other words, if you're going to sin, do it occasionally and enjoy it, but understand that it is a sin. You've done it, you've enjoyed it, and it will raise your blood glucose. That's fine. But if you want to lead a sort of healthy life and basically not worry about that, then you take more temperate climate fruit because they tend to have a lower glycemic index. Many of the berries and these sort of things are very low glycemic index. They also have a lot of antioxidant with them. Things like simple things like apples and pears and nectarines and these sort of things are relatively low glycemic index. They're in the sort of low intermediate range, so they're fine. You're not going to come to any harm if you take these in moderation and take them regularly. So in fact, they become a staple part of your diet. This is good.